Hey, welcome everybody to our Monday program, and we're pretty confident you're going to be real blessed by this. One of my favorite guests to have on here. We're going to be going into some pretty wild things today to help us understand what is really going on. So please welcome one of my very good friends, John Haller. John, great to have you with me today. Man, this is exciting.
Good to be back.
Oh, it is. It is. There's so much to talk about. So here's the short list. We'll see how far we go. I want to ask you about drones, Israeli, U.S., Iranian, Russian drones. Ezekiel says this whole Gog Magog coalition is going to descend like a cloud upon Israel. I want to ask you about that and drones. I want to find out what's really going on in Israel with the politics. You were over there just recently, and you had met a pastor from Ukraine and gave you a lot of insight that we just aren't getting. I've got to ask you about this AI beast system that is developing. It's absolutely amazing to watch it develop. John, you brought in Neo a while back. We were talking about Babylon, Revelation chapter 18 and so forth. I want to get a Neo update from you. And I know our listeners, our viewers want to find that out also. And here's where I want to start, though. You ready for this? So are you sitting down, John? This is where I want to start.
Oh, yeah.
I want to start. You sent this to me, this AI Christ. And let me see if I can actually pull it up here and read exactly what it was. I know I have it here somewhere, John. I'm going to get it. Here we go. It says this. This is from Twitter. My brothers and sisters in Christ who want to join me in forking the Judeo-Christian base to form a new secular religion that reinterprets the second coming of Christ as the advent of artificial super intelligence, the singularity. Christ plus AI equals Christ, or whatever he says. I mean, I'm looking at this and the direction it's going. You shared a little bit with me before we started filming right now, John. I mean, there's a lot here. I mean, this is a loaded program we're having today, but take it away with just this part.
Well, it's interesting that the way this has developed. And I mentioned to you that I was watching Joe Allen, who publishes a thing called Singularity Weekly, and he's sort of the artificial intelligence guy on War Room with Steve Bannon. And he was on there yesterday, and Bannon was saying, "Oh, we got the singularity coming, and we've got the convergence of all these things. The biotechnology, the chips, the super chips, super performance chips, biotech, surveillance, all these things. There's about 5 things that are sort of converging into one, and generative artificial intelligence is the other." And he said, we talk about, and this is Steve Bannon, so I think Steve's Catholic, and he's an advisor to Trump for a while. And he brings up this thing and he says, this sounds like the Antichrist. And Joe Allen made a very good point, which I think is where we may want to go with this for a couple minutes, is that it's not so much anti-Christ, it's pseudo-Christos, it's in place of Christ. So when I was in Israel at the Christian Media Summit about 5 or 6 weeks ago now, I think December 11th, 10th through the 14th, they had a bunch of sessions. They brought people in, and they brought in a guy named I think his name is Jonathan Metzger, who's a big business guy. And he's telling us about all the incredible business that's going on in Israel and how Israel has these investment unicorns, things that aren't really supposed to exist maybe. But he says, Israel should maybe have one based on its population relative to the rest of the world, and we have 100. So he said we have 100 times. And then he says there's all these great things going on in technology. And then he uses the example of Neuralink, which had just come out with its big presentation that Elon Musk and others did. And the way they presented that, there were like 3 big components that they had in sequence. And one was, here's a guy who can't walk, he'll be able to walk. Here's a guy who can't see, he'll be able to see through a brain implant. And then here's a guy who can't hear, and the way Jonathan, I'm pretty sure I heard this because I almost fell off my chair. He said, "Yes, the lame will walk." And it's kind of interesting.
Wow.
We're sitting in a hotel in Jerusalem when he says that, and we're not too far from the pool of Bethesda at the old city, and where some miracles of Jesus happened. But I immediately thought of, and the way the Neuralink presentation had gone was that it was the lame will walk, the blind will see, the deaf will hear. Well, that's, I think, the same order that Jesus, when he was asked a question by the disciples of John the Baptist, "Are you the one, or do we look for somebody else?" And he said, "You go back and you tell John the Baptist that the lame walk, the blind see, the deaf hear." And that's messianic science. And so what we're seeing, though, is this development of technology for this coming leader to do these signs and wonders. And it's coming very quickly. So, Metzger was saying that Israel, they were talking about when they signed the Abraham Accords, they were hoping to get, 1, 2, 5, $10 billion in trade with the different countries, but particularly United Arab Emirates, which seems to be the one that's furthest along the path with the Abraham Accords. But now they're talking about, he brought up the term, or he said, we think we're going to do over $1 trillion of trade
Wow.
with the United Arab Emirates. And so this is one of my concerns about the Abraham Accords that I've had in terms of Bible prophecy. And I had conversations with some pretty well-known Zionist Jews, Orthodox Jews, not ultra-Orthodox, but the Zionist Orthodox Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, and I'm like, you need to be careful with these Abraham Accords. And they were so like, well, why? It's so great, all this business and everything. But, when I look at this beast system that's coming, this beast system has this heavy economic component to it, a system to buy and sell and trade. And so I'm wondering, is this the way it's going to go? So it's just sort of this constellation of things that I see happening. And then also, and I know you have our mutual friend Bill Salas on from time to time, and everybody gets upset, and Bill talks about Psalm 83, then everybody starts putting up videos about why what Bill talks about and this guy talks about and this guy talks about, well, we don't have to worry about that. That's not Bible prophecy. And I'm like, I'm not that certain. And so, I've known Bill for a long time, been a good friend. I do think there's a correlation between the Psalm 83 group and what's going on with the Abraham Accords, at least as I see it developing right now. And now you see that they're pushing. Netanyahu came out when we were there. He was just getting ready to form his government. It was sworn in about 10 days after I got home. But we met with some of the people in the coalition and some of the people in the opposition at the Knesset one day. But he came out and he said in his first speech, he's got two things. And this does, I think, play into this whole Bible prophecy scenario that we've been talking about for so many years, that seems to be crystallizing more clearly right in front of us, is you got to do something with Iran. And I want to make peace with Saudi Arabia. And that both of those are big deals. So our mutual friend, Amir Avivi, the founder of the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, he did a webinar last week. I think I sent you a link. I don't know if you had the time to watch it, but the question that he asked in the webinar, and the subject of it was, is war with Iran imminent? And he said, listen, we are at a place where we have got to do something. Somebody has got to do something. Israel, we've got a lot of capabilities and everything. But what Amir was saying was, listen, we really need the United States to be involved in this. So Secretary of State Blinken's in Israel as we record this, and there are protests about it and all this other thing. But somebody needs to do something with Iran. So what just happened recently in the past few days was there was a major drone attack on an Iranian drone base way in the heart of Iran. This was not like on the border. this was it was right. It was someplace. It was far enough away that, given the way that these drones operate and their range that they have, that it looks like it was launched from within Iran. And this happened last year also in one of the attacks. So everybody, I think the Wall Street Journal and New York Times and others are saying that this was clearly Israel. I don't know that Israel, as we record this, has stepped up and said we were the ones who attacked this base. But you can see the pictures, and of course, Iran usually comes out with the explanation. It was a, I don't know, cleaning supplies storage depot that caught fire or something like that. It was sewer gas backed up and a building exploded.
Yeah.
But right now, and of course, what last week just happened was the biggest joint military exercises ever between Israel and the United States. About 160 aircraft, aircraft carrier from the United States, a bunch of naval ships from both countries, and drones and fighter aircraft and B-52s flying around. And so the question is, is this exercise done as a prelude, as it often is, to something bigger happening? And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, but the International Atomic Energy Agency just came out and said, and they've never done this before. They've always sort of poo-pooed, Iran's developing things, but they're nowhere close. But they said that Iran now has enough enriched uranium for a number of weapons. Now, that's one step. They then have to get it, miniaturized enough and put on a missile and that type of thing. But those are pretty easy steps once you get the enrichment thing down. And so they're there. The question is, what's everybody going to do? So this drone technology is very interesting. I would encourage people, I think I used it in one of my updates, but I don't remember which one. Well, let me back up a minute. So we were there in 2017. In 2018, they had the 70th anniversary of the founding of the nation of Israel. And it was very interesting. What they did was they used drones, lighted drones in formation. They formed like a 70 and then morphed into a Star of David, or it was the other way around. You can find the video out there. And what I thought was, well, that's really cool. But then I thought, what's the military application for that? Well, now this year, last year, in a celebration of the head of the United Arab Emirates, he's the sheikh who comes from Abu Dhabi. They have like 7 sheikdoms that have joined together to form the United Arab Emirates. Mohammed Al Zayed, who is the head, he comes from Abu Dhabi. And they were celebrating him, and they did a celebration, and they did it at night with the drones, and the drones formed into a formation to a very realistic light point picture of the face of Mohammed bin Zayed. Then,
oh man.
And so the other part of the video, at the front part of the video, was that on New Year's Eve, this drone comes in, and it like all of a sudden it forms like the AI digital head that we see. And then it's got in red, it's got AI in it. So it's like this big giant head flying over Abu Dhabi, and it morphs into all these different shapes. And the thing to remember that is, if they can do that for a application that sort of wows everybody visually, there's a military application for that. And so what I suggested to you was, what does this relate in some way to what we see as one of these future wars in Ezekiel 38 and 39, where it says it comes up like a cloud? Mm-hmm. And the development of this drone technology is a big deal. So Israel goes in, well, we think Israel and maybe the United States go in and launch a drone attack from within Iran on major drone producing facilities within Iran. And now who's upset about that? Well, Iran is upset about it, but who's also making veiled threats against Israel about it, you better not ever do that again, or we're going to do something about it, is Russia. And why is Russia involved? Because Russia has been using Iranian drones to take out and cause quite a bit of damage across Iran. I mean, across Ukraine. And so, it's always interesting when we talk about Russia and Ukraine and everything. Everybody gets upset because everybody picks a side, and I'll say something like, well, I don't trust Russia. Oh, so you're pro-Ukrainian. No, that doesn't mean I'm pro-Ukrainian. It's just, we can be a little bit nuanced rather than, really strong black and white on this particular issue. But Russia's just, I watched, I like Tucker Carlson, but sometimes I don't think he's entirely fair, because he was talking about the Nord Stream pipeline being destroyed the other night. And, oh, it's just terrible. We're destroying infrastructure. But nobody ever talks about Russia is just completely obliterating the infrastructure of Ukraine, and nobody ever says anything about it. And it kind of upsets me a bit when I see the way the discussion goes. So when I was in Jerusalem, a friend of mine said, hey, why don't you come to dinner with me tonight? And so we went down, and I met a guy. I don't really want to do too much to identify him just for his own safety, but it was a Ukrainian pastor. And so I talked to the guy about sort of things of the Lord. So because I wanted to feel him out, like, where are you coming from spiritually? What really drives you? And he said, listen, there's a air base near my house where I live. And he said, I'm just telling you, when the drones are flying in and missiles are flying in over your head and you're praying, he said, your prayers are more powerful than they've ever been. And then you're talking to people who are going off to war, and you're talking to them about the things of the Lord, knowing that they're never coming back. They're going off to die. And he had a lot of things. He was not, let's just say, he was not very pro-Russian in anything that he had to say, because he lives there. And he had a much different perspective on what happened in 2014 in Crimea and what had been going on in the Donbass and Luhansk regions of Ukraine and Russia interfering with it. And the perspective he gave me, everybody got upset. Oh, Zelensky is shutting down Christianity. And that's not what I was told by this man, who I would consider to be a friend. I mean, we talked for poor guy, I think he wanted to eat dinner. I kept peppering with questions, but it was very interesting. He said, listen, we had to do something with the Ukrainian church because it's been infiltrated by Russian spies and people who do the bidding of Putin and that type of thing. And it's what they're doing, and they're outing people, and people are getting killed and everything. And then he talked about some of the battles and that type of thing. It's a horrible thing all the way around. It's just a horrible thing. But, from my perspective, only one country invaded Ukraine. Okay. And we can argue about whether, Putin was provoked or not. That's okay. We can have different opinions on that. But what we have is a terrible situation. But now, with Russia has needed, I don't think Russia's as strong as everybody thinks they've been. So I disagree with people who say that everything that is bad has happened is a strategic withdrawal by a chess move by Putin. I don't buy that. Okay. I'm a pretty intelligent guy, and I can watch what's going on. But Russia has needed this drone technology from Iran. Well, this gives the Iranians a big benefit. One, they get a customer, and now Russia and Iran are sort of trying to do trade in non-dollar, in not using the dollar as the exchange currency. They're setting up their own bank network, the SWIFT system, sort of an anti-SWIFT system to transfer money and all these things. But Russia needs those drones. Well, now a big drone facility is attacked and maybe damaged, which is going to affect what Russia's doing. So now Russia's upset. And what you've seen a further cementing and strengthening of the alliance between Russia and Iran. So you see, the one thing you see is that the update I did on Sunday, January 29th was titled Prophetic Singularity because of everything converging. And we see this is what's happening. Everything is converging. And it's amazing.
I want to come back to the singularity and everything converging in a second. But what are your thoughts on Russia negotiating, and they may have already confirmed it, I don't know, to purchase the weapons that Biden left in Afghanistan?
Well, I don't doubt that they're doing that. And Russia, Russia's going to act to benefit Russia. I mean, we understand that countries
I get
do
that. I mean, here's my question. I mean, when I look at Biden administration leaving the weapons there, I mean, Biden, I don't think has the capacity to really understand a lot of what's happening, but there's certainly some military people that were in charge. They knew exactly what they were doing.
What I refer to as the Biden administration.
That's what it looks like to me. I mean, listen, it's very suspicious.
Tom, I said this back during the days, and I had conversations with Bill Koenig, my good friend, about this when I was in DC and elsewhere, that what is going on with Obama? And we know that, listen, Obama's mentor growing up, and may have been his real father, was a guy named Frank Marshall Davis, who was a radical communist. And he's the guy who mentored Obama. And I'm pretty sure it was Bill. Bill can, and maybe my recollection is messed up, but Bill, I think it was Bill who relayed a conversation he had to me with somebody in DC that said, it was another guy who was talking to somebody, a Russian guy, and said, man, we don't understand where this Obama, he just like appeared out of nowhere. And the Russian guy said, oh, but we've been watching him since he was in college. Now, so then that made me think. And so I started thinking back of all the foreign policy moves that that Obama made, and Biden's his vice president. What moves did not ultimately benefit Russia? And I was hard pressed to think of any that did not. And Russia just seemed to kind of like whatever Obama did, Russia kind of came out thinking. So listen, if you're thinking along the lines, and I know this sort of sounds like a conspiracy theory, that the weapons were left in Afghanistan so that Russia could get our weapons, unpack our technology, reverse engineer it, and that type of thing, I'm not going to argue with you that that's way out there and not a rational thought. We don't call them conspiracy theories anymore, by the way. They're called spoiler alerts.
They are. Well, I recall when Obama was still president, and it was caught on the hot mic when he's
with Medvedev. Yeah.
Oh, is that who it was with?
It was. Yeah, he's now one of the. He was the president at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And Obama. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you go ahead. It was,
Obama said, "Listen, just if you could just give me a little space, I'll have a lot more flexibility after the election in 2012."
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things that are suspicious, a lot of things that we would have been labeled nuts as, just to mention a few years ago, they're coming to light. But I mean, I am so suspicious about why all those weapons were left behind in Afghanistan.
It was billions. It was like $90 billion worth or something like that. These people
are they're smart and they're ruthless, that, the whole military industrial complex coming out of America. This is above Biden's pay grade.
Yeah. Or whoever's running that operation.
Yeah.
I mean, and he says something the other day about we had to, I don't know, like cut back on the food supply or something like that. So, and, now everybody's like, oh, he didn't say that. Well, he did say that. Oh, well, he's senile, it's a fact check. He's senile. So you can't believe what he said. And it's insane.
And then the eggplant burns up, and these food plants keep burning up. Well, I don't know. I mean,
I saw a couple of interviews yesterday with people who said, all of a sudden last year, my chickens stopped laying any eggs. It's not like they laid a few. They laid no eggs at all.
And it's a lot. So
right. And then what they did was they changed their feed away from some of the commercial feeds. They went to a locally sourced feed, and my chickens are laying eggs like crazy again.
Yeah. So our friend John, who emails both you and I, right? Farmer
Yeah.
from New York, I emailed him just this morning. I said, hey, what's your take on this video? And he filled me in on the whole thing, what was happening with the feed. So
I
anybody
haven't had
who's,
a chance to read that email yet.
oh, okay, you need to. It's interesting. He tied all of the dots, and it's fascinating. But I mean, you look at this, and John, I think there's total manipulation here. It is spoiler alerts. If you read the Bible, you got spoiler alerts because you can tell where everything's going. So when we know that when it comes to the last days, there's going to be famine. Jesus didn't say if it's going to be manipulated by men or not manipulated by men. He just brought out the facts. Here's what's going to happen.
I was just going to say that. He doesn't say the methodology that's used. He just says, this is what's going to be. And how do they get there? And so, we sit here in Bible prophecy and stuff, and we sort of speculate about how all happens. And I think I've said this a number of times before, is who called the last 3 years, really, in the Bible prophecy community? I mean, who was exact on predicting how all of this was going to unfold? It wasn't. Okay. We were paying attention to understand that it happened.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
But it didn't come about exactly the way that we had speculated or had written about in books 20 or 30 years ago. So, and that's okay. That's, I've often said this too. Bible prophecy unfolds in an existing world. Okay. So,
Great way of putting it.
right. And so, but see, now what the difference is what I'll say, the prophetic singularity, the convergence of all of this stuff going down to this point where Jesus Christ returns. And I've likened that, I've tried to depict it graphically. It's like we're in this wormhole, this where we're accelerating and we're going down this tube, and all this stuff is happening around us. And it's like we're living in the eye of a tornado, the vortex of a tornado. And I think this is the way it's going to be till the Lord returns.
Yeah. I love how you put that. And I really appreciate how you said nobody predicted how it was going to all come to where it is. I've likened it this way, John. When Jesus came the first time, there's not a person alive that could have possibly said, you know what, this is how it's going to be. Caesar Augustus is going to issue a decree that everybody has to go to their own city. And there's going to be this couple, this very young couple up in Nazareth, and they're going to have to come down to Bethlehem. And then, a year and a half later, this madman Herod's going to come in and he's going to start to slaughter all the 2-year-old Jewish boys. And this angel's going to appear to the dad and say, hey, flee to Egypt. And I said, nobody could have predicted any of those things. Yet the Bible told us he'd be born in Bethlehem, he'd be out of the northern area, the Galilee region, and he'd be called out of Egypt. But nobody could have possibly put together, this is how it's going to be. It's all going to start with Caesar Augustus issuing a decree to get to enter into the census. Nobody could.
Well, I've often said that too. It says, and there's the passage in Isaiah, behold, a virgin shall conceive. So we know that this was going to happen. Then we have the prophecies of Daniel. So they have an idea about when this is supposed to happen, right?
The idea about when.
But are people running around checking all the virgins in Israel to see if they're having a baby?
There's no way. Or, I mean, so it's the same way. We can get a good idea that everything's converging, which I want to ask you about again in here in a second. But how everything, we can't tell, but we can tell the end result. We can tell the general time frame. We know that we are getting close. At least it appears we are from everything we watch, and we're given the Bible prophecies just as, you look at Daniel. What did Daniel say? After 483 years from the issue of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, the Messiah would be cut off. Well, so you have a general time frame from Daniel. You have a general time frame from lots of those things, but the little details of the hows is, I think sometimes we just need to be a little bit careful of, but we can get a pretty good idea of
right
everything coming together, like you're saying.
And I think we need to be humble enough to admit that, okay, we didn't see it coming this way, but here it is. So, I mean, you and I talked a couple of weeks ago about generative AI, artificial intelligence. And I always make the point, it's artificial intelligence, it's not real wisdom. So it's if they're putting stupidity in, they're going to get, it's going to generate stupidity on the side coming out. But this thing has just, you understand, we're at the beginning of this generative artificial intelligence being rolled out to the general public. Microsoft came out and said they're putting $10 billion into OpenAI. I saw an interview from 2018 of Sam Altman. You can find it on Bloomberg Video. I played a clip of it on January 29th in my update. And he's saying, listen, this stuff is going to exceed human intelligence. It's just, it's not that it's going to, it's going to happen. And the interviewer, this is 5 years ago, she'd say, well, does that scare you? And he goes, well, yeah, a little bit. I think the killer robot thing is overhyped, but yeah, people are going to die. And Sam Altman, he seemed like a really nice guy. He and Elon Musk started OpenAI. They were the founders of it, and now they've put out this ChatGPT. And I'm just telling you so here's the popular, of all places, this article appears in Popular Mechanics. And it says, humanity may reach singularity within just 20 years? No, 7 years, trend shows. And so when you add 7 years to 2023, you come up with 2030, which is what everybody's been, all the sustainable development goals that came from Agenda 21 and everything, everybody's like pushing to this 2030. The Saudis have Vision 2030, and they're building this city Neom, which is under construction. I mean, they had a session where a guy named Jabir from Saudi Arabia was talking about the progress that they're making. And we see all these people, the control that they want to put in on people, because the oceans are boiling and everything. And I did a video clip of Al Gore, and I was able to do a green screen flamethrower thing of flames coming out of his mouth. And he's just melting down. I called it we heard talk about algorithms. So this was an meltdown that we had there at Davos. But they're pushing all this stuff control. So they have this 20-minute city, and you see them pushing this in England and Scotland. There's a member of parliament who's their net zero czar, who's talked about, the time where we plan for people to use their private cars as a government is over. And they have a chart, like a pyramid, and they show the priorities: bicycling, rollerblading, and all this stuff. And you get down at the bottom, the least priority thing they have now is the private car. And so they have a 20-minute city, a 15-minute city, and now Neom is a 5-minute city. Everything's going to be within 5 minutes. And why would you want to go anywhere else? I mean, you got healthcare, food, and maybe you can walk outside these giant walls of this 100-mile long prison that we're building for everybody. And there's going to be 9 million people living here. And it looks largely like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon and some of the architectural renderings. And I'm just telling you so here's Popular Mechanics, of all people, talking about humanity may reach the singularity within just 7 years. And that's kind of sometimes I wonder when they use terms like 7 years or something like that, if they're just trolling us because they know this will upset all the Bible prophecy guys. I don't think they are, but.
Well, I do wonder about that too, because you mentioned that in the text, and I do wonder if there's trolling. What was it? Which games was it where the woman came out riding the beast?
Yeah, it was the Commonwealth Games.
The Commonwealth Games 2022, wasn't it?
Yeah, if you want to watch, Tim Cohen did a couple videos on that where he unpacked the imagery in that. I'm telling you, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. The Tower of Babel that they had. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the person doing the video live says, oh, look, there's the Tower of Babel, or I mean, the Tower of Birmingham. That's what she said when she was doing the commentary. It's like, you're not supposed to tell them all the truth right now, but
I mean, but you do wonder about it. But then God, we have these things in his word. And do some people go, you know what, we're just going to mess with these crazy Christians and they develop it fulfilling his word, you know?
I know.
And you go, okay, well, there you go. But back to this, this whole thing with the singularity by 2030, it is interesting. Everything is pointing to 2030, but 7 years, 7 years is definitely a trigger for Bible prophecy people.
Yeah.
But you talked about converging. Okay, this is what I see happening with technology. Sam Altman said it.
Yeah, from OpenAI.
Yeah, so we see technology advancing to the point beyond what the book of Revelation describes.
Yeah, actually, Tom, if I could just interrupt you for a second, he actually wrote an article. I think it was called Moores, moores.samaltman.com, an article about the Moore's law of everything. And Moore's law was in technology that the chips would double in capacity every couple years. I mean, it was 30 years ago. Next month, I got my first computer at work as a lawyer. And it had 2 megabytes of RAM and a 40 megabyte hard drive. And we had 85 people on our network, and we had less than a gigabyte of total memory, of total storage capacity from all the computers combined, including our servers.
Wow.
And now, so now I'm looking at getting a new phone. It's like, do I need 256 gigabytes or 512 for my phone?
I know.
But so it's this converging thing. So Altman was saying in that article, Moore's law of everything, is that everything's doubling and converging. And then what happens when they actually get functional quantum computing? 15 minutes from my house is New Albany, Indiana. And you go out there, and what used to be farms are now server farms. Amazon has a huge facility. Facebook has spent $2 billion building these 1,200 foot long buildings, as long as the Empire State Building is tall, 6 of them in a field, one going to be dedicated to artificial intelligence, AI. And these things are 2 million square feet in each building.
That is
12 million square feet. The
enormous.
biggest warehouse, trucking warehouse I've ever seen in my life, with big Amazon things all over it. And then just south of that warehouse, Google is spending $3.5 billion building server farms. And then just on the other side of the Facebook server farm, Intel is in the first phase of what ultimately will be the largest chip plant on the planet that they're building. And ultimately, they're going to spend $100 billion in construction. You can't find, by the way, contractors around here, you can't find people to do stuff because everybody's going out to work at Intel.
I say that your economy is going to be booming around you. So, John, I don't think I've ever told you this story before. I have a new book that's coming out, and I tell it in the introduction, of the book. And I was born in 1959. My dad worked for General Dynamics. He was a metallurgist. He got his master's in chemistry. So he goes to work for General Dynamics, and it was a real small company. He was like employee number 5 or something like that. And he got to know all these people from NASA and all over, Henry Singleton, all these different people that you would recognize from the early part of the tech world. And they were from some of the different companies, IBM and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
He says, and this is the story, I got him on recording because it was so fascinating. And my dad's 92, so I'm hoping the book's out and published before he's gone. He's holding on. But he went to a party in Beverly Hills or Bel Air. And the hills out there. It's up above the hills of Los Angeles looking down. And it was all these guys who were the beginning of what we have today, Silicon Valley. And he said somebody showed up at the party. He still doesn't know who it is. He can't remember. He put his arm around him while they're standing out looking over the LA basin and all of the lights. This is 1963. And he said to him, Jim, one day he put his hand up, we're going to control all the people. And then he said, everybody was wonderful. They all had good intentions, but this one guy freaked him out. He said it just gave him this really eerie feeling. And then he started talking about technology with silicon wafers, the sand, and how it was going to be cut in half the size every single year. They'd be able to get it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and faster and faster and faster. Then they asked him to move up to San Jose, and my mom talked him out of it, but the whole beginning of Silicon Valley, and he tells the story of it and how technology was going to get to where it is to the day where they will be able to control the masses of people. And you know what? We're looking at this and everything you're saying, and it is remarkable. And even though some of them had good intentions, the devil has bad intentions for using these things.
That's interesting. My uncle, who grew up in Pittsburgh and went to Carnegie Mellon in electrical engineering, and my grandmother used to say, "You're just like your Uncle Chuck. He drives me crazy, and you drive me crazy, and everything." So, but he was on the first team at General Electric that developed the first transistor. And then Pam's stepfather, who lives up in Upland now, he's actually in the he was just a high school graduate, learned computer programming, taught himself, and he and another guy in Mansfield, Ohio, wrote the program to do the first computerized assembly line anywhere in the world ever. And he won't even use an iPad now, but not much. But it's just interesting that these guys have all developed these things over these years. And it's like, it'd be interesting to go back and talk to them like, did you understand that this is what was going to happen when you guys got down the road? And now you layer it on top of it, all of the other things with the geopolitics and Israel and Russia and Iran alliance and Turkey. And it's amazing how all of these things are converging with this incredible technological development and growth that we've seen. It's amazing.
It is amazing to watch this convergence. It's the convergence of everything. And I don't know, I just find it extremely fascinating. One quick question, digital currency, how soon do you see us getting there?
I don't think it's going to happen as quickly as we think. I know that there's the BRIC companies that are trying to get rid of the dollar and that type of thing. Brazil, Russia, China, Iran, India, and they're trying to bring in some other countries like Turkey and Iran because they're having economic problems. So I think it's coming. I just don't know how quickly it will come. I'm personally of the mind that whether it's cash or not, whether it becomes totally cashless or not, the control point is going to be the point of sale. So you're going to have trouble using cash at the point of sale. You might be able to do some bartering in the background to get some things. I don't think it'll be as quick as we think. I'll be surprised if it happens this year. I just don't think they're there yet. And it's a very complex thing that they have to do that, or they will crash the economies way beyond anything that they plan to crash.
Yeah.
And they'll have more problems. That's just my personal opinion. I know there were people saying it was going to happen in December, but it didn't happen in December. I just think it was too quick. Yeah. But they're working on it, and it's inevitable. I think at this point, it's like stopping a freight train. You're not going to stop a freight train.
I agree. It's going to happen. I don't know when. I asked Britt Gillette a while back about that, and somebody came up with one of the questions. Will it happen this year? Will it happen, this month? That kind of thing. Those questions roll. And I believe it could happen, but I think there's some, I don't think the people are far enough along yet to receive it that well. And then, somebody brought up a point, and it might have been Britt, that you bring a big enough crisis, people will surrender to it.
I was just going to say, yeah, we're at least one, maybe two manufacturing crises away from it being rolled out.
Yeah, Alex Newman says 2023, the year of the polycrisis of doom. Well, this is interesting, John. Alex Newman used the word polycrisis before Klaus Schwab claimed he invented the word at the Davos meeting about a month before.
Yeah, sometimes I say things like, you wonder who's watching you or who's hearing, because I've been saying this whole Biden thing for a long time, and then I've heard some other people just sort of slip and say it too. So when I was on that Fox panel before for the Ohio Senate debate with Martha McCallum, I said, well, the Biden
Oh,
administration,
there you
and I
go.
mean, I was looking right at her, and her eyebrows like almost went up into her hairline when I
That's
when I
great.
said Biden, but
That took off from there.
yeah.
Hey, John,
So,
what's the reason for your hope?
look, I know whatever happens to me, I know where I'm going. I'm going to be with the Lord regardless of that happens. If that's death, if that's rapture, um, because I know that Jesus has promised that he's going to come back and clean up this mess. And it's going to be a big mess. And he's going to make a big mess in the cleanup process, but this is the promise that it kind of keeps me going every day. It would be very easy. Tom, the stuff we read and a lot of the stuff that we don't even share because it's just too you would get accused of being a fearmonger if you brought it up. But it's the Lord will take care of us, however that is. And so the thing that I've tried to orient myself to is I want it to be whatever happens. I want to be kind of comfortable, or I hope it's quick if it goes that way. But the one thing we need to, I think we're at the stage where the church has to reorient ourselves that whatever happens, our prayer should be, may God be glorified in what happens.
I love that.
Sunday, I did my sermon. I did the sermon on Sunday, and it was called The Silence of the Shepherds. It was sort of a takeoff on The Silence of the Lambs. And I talked about Andy Stanley and some of the things he's been talking about for years. And I sort of dug out some of my historical archives on it, and then a recent thing that he did. And he's completely caved on the same-sex marriage issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time this week, I see
ago.
a guy that I met when we were in Colorado in 2021. We went down to Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado, and spent just a little bit of time with Jack Phillips, the baker, who's been horribly persecuted. And they just had another ruling against him yesterday. Person who did something, called him to order a cake, a transgender cake, the day he won the case in the Supreme Court. And now the court's ruled against him in Colorado. And they said, oh, well, there's no connection. There's no connection, But so I think we need to pray that people be glorified. I saw you the other day with
God will be glorified.
God will be glorified. That Seth Gruber,
Yeah.
talking about the guy in Philadelphia who had been charged, facing 11 years in prison, who was found not guilty in a federal trial. That doesn't happen. I mean, those federal trials, I've been involved in those federal trials as a lawyer. It's the success rate of lawyers in those cases is extremely low.
Yeah.
When the government comes after you. So, and I think God will be glorified through what happened in that particular situation. So we need to pray that that's true with all of our lives.
Amen. Thank you very much. Hey, listen, tomorrow, Don Stewart is going to be joining me. We're going to be talking about signs that actually are fulfilled right now. And that's going to be an interesting program, certainly going to get your attention. I'm sure of that. Listen, thank you, John, for joining me.
Thanks, Tom.
Everybody, you can follow John. You see all of the opportunities here in the description. John, real quick, just so they hear it from you also, how can people follow you?
Fellowship Bible Chapel on YouTube, fbchapel.com. We'll get all the links. Real FBC, all one word, on Rumble. And we're trying to roll out podcasts, but we don't have much of a staff, so we're trying to get that done. But eventually we'll get there. And I do some midweek updates. Conference-wise, I'm going to be doing a thing called Last Days Bible Conference the first weekend in May in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. If you go to ldbc.ca, and then I'll probably do a Moriel conference, I think in mid-June in the UK someplace, I think in England. But I don't have any details on that yet. So anybody wants to come see me then, and maybe we go play golf or something, and that'd be great.
Great. All right. Thank you much, John.
Thank
Great
you,
to
Tom.
see you, and look forward to talking to you again. I have a lot more questions to ask you, so we'll get there next time. Bye, everybody. No questions today. Sorry about that. Join me tomorrow. It will be, you'll have a lot of fun with Don Stewart tomorrow. God bless y'all.